Brazil is the largest country in both South America and the Latin American region. It is the world's fifth largest country, both by geographical area and by population. The Brazilian economy is the world's seventh largest by nominal GDP and the seventh largest by purchasing power parity. As of 2012, a member of the BRIC group, which includes the countries Russia, India, and China, Brazil has one of the world's fastest growing major economies, with its economic reforms giving the country new international recognition and influence. Brazil's National Development Bank plays an important role for the country's economic growth. Brazil is a founding member of the United Nations, the G20, CPLP, Latin Union, the Organization of Libero-American States, the Organization of Countries home to a variety of wildlife, natural environments, and extensive natural resources in a variety of protected habitats. Brazil is a regional power in Latin America and a middle power in international affairs, with some analysis identifying it as an emerging global power.
Brazil has several notable resources including coffee, iron ore, sugarcane ethanol, oranges, deep water oil, cattle, soybeans, aluminum, water and hydroelectric power, rainforest, and biodiversity. From this, some of the country's major economic sectors include agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and service.
In 2011, the central bank raised its benchmark policy interest rate to 11.25%, a rate significantly higher relative to other major markets. While tight monetary policies combat inflation, higher interest rates encourage foreign investment inflows, creating the conditions to help maintain an appreciated real. To offset inflationary pressures, due mainly to robust domestic consumption and investment demand, Brazil recently initiated a tight monetary policy.
Brazil's current rate of unemployment is at 5.5%, a historic low for the country, and its inflation rate is at 5.4%. Brazil is also involved in trade and FDI, exporting transport equipment, iron ore, soybeans, footwear, coffee, and automobiles. Brazil's four major trading partners include China, occupying 17% of Brazil's trade, the US at 11.1%, Argentina at 7.4%, and the Netherlands at 6.2%.
Brazil's largest trading partner is the European Union, accounting for 21.4% of its total trade. The EU imports from Brazil are dominated by primary products, in particular agricultural products, which is 40.4%, and fuels and mining products, which is 28.8%. But manufactured products such as machinery, transport equipment, and miscellaneous manufactured products are also important. They represent around one-fourth of Brazilian exports to the EU. U.S. goods and private services trade with Brazil totaled $107 billion in 2012. Exports totaled $68 billion. Imports totaled $39 billion. The U.S. goods and services trade surplus with Brazil was $29 billion in 2012. This caused Brazil to be the United States' seventh largest goods exports market and the 16th largest supplier of goods import market in 2013. Some main exports to the U.S. include machinery, mineral fuel, aircraft, electrical machinery, and organic chemicals. Some main imports to the U.S. include mineral fuel and crude oil, iron and steel, machinery, and aircraft. The leading agricultural imports include coffee, tobacco, and coarse grain. The U.S. goods imports from Brazil totaled $27.6 billion in 2013, a 14.2% decrease from 2012, but up 54% from 2003. U.S. imports from Brazil accounted for 1.2% of overall U.S. imports in 2013. U.S. goods exports to Brazil in 2013 were $44.1 billion, up 0.7% from 2012, and up 294% from 2003. U.S. exports to Brazil accounted for 2.8% of overall U.S. exports in 2013.
Brazil is generally open to FDI, but sometimes becomes restricted due to a fear of FDI taking over domestic companies. The main restrictions include taxing on foreign investments in fixed assets, local derivatives, and margin accounts. Since 2000, Brazil has been the second largest receiver of FDI. Brazil has a floating exchange rate system, meaning the country's exchange rate fluctuates according to the foreign exchange market. FDI in 2010 and 2011 totaled over $100 billion US. In 2010, natural resources, including agriculture, especially oil and gas and metal mining, accounted for the largest share of FDI at 39%. Chinese FDI was mostly in the oil, steel, and mining sectors. In 2006 to 2009, FDI was mainly directed towards manufacturing at 42% of all FDI, following by services 34% and natural resources 24%.
Brazil is part of several preferential trading agreements, including the General System of Trade Preferences among Developing Countries, which provides tariff concessions to stimulate trade, Latin American Integration Association, which integrates economies of Latin America for effective reciprocal trade, Southern Common Market, which promotes free trade and movements of goods, people, and currency, Protocol relating to trade negotiations among developing countries, which increases trade between developing countries according to GATT. According to the European Commission's latest reports on potentially trade restrictive measures over the last 2 years, Brazil is among the countries that have restored to the highest number of new potentially trade restrictive measures. The Brazilian market is relatively highly protected with an applied customs averaging tariff of 13.5%. The EU therefore consistently encourages Brazil to reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers and to maintain a stable regulatory environment for European investors and traders.
Brazilian national trade reveals comparative advantages in the use of unskilled labor, in capital, and in land, and no comparative advantage in the use of skilled labor. Countries like Brazil have an extremely large yet concentrated factor endowment that tended toward exploitation, a hierarchical social system, and exhibited economies of scale. Cuba and Brazil primarily grew lucrative products such as cotton, coffee, and sugar, which required hand picking and most efficiently picked when by hands in unison.
Over the last several years, GDP has increased to 2.33 trillion US dollars, and GDP per capita has reached 11,700 US dollars. These are both due to a huge growth in GDP of 7.5% in 2010. Since then, it has plateaued with a 2.7% increase in 2011 and a 0.9% increase in 2012. Despite this stagnation, it is noteworthy that Brazil successfully weathered the economic storm of 2008 because of its effective government policies and a diversified economy.
Huge international sports competitions are supposed to boost economies from several directions. Due to the fear of a recession in the near future, Brazil's government put in a bid to host the 2014 FIFA World Cup and spent upwards of $11 billion to invest in building facilities for the contest and preparing the country for incoming tourists. The economy is expected to benefit from several factors, including tourism, currency overvaluation, job creation, development of infrastructure, and political benefits and alliances. Tourism will account for the lion's share of the revenue, with an estimated 600,000 fans visiting Brazil to attend the World Cup.
Overall, in our assessment in Brazil, we come to conclude that unemployment is the lowest it's been in Brazil, but the per capita income is the highest it's been, which causes a better sense of living in the country. The GDP is grown a lot in the past couple of years, which is great for the economy, but the downside is that its current trade policy has come into conflict with other countries, which is not good for their trading industry.